Hi there, welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight we open a diary that holds more than memories. It holds a chilling secret. The final page is torn with mystery, and Hercule Poirot knows that every word could be a hidden clue. What begins as a simple journal soon unravels into a trail of betrayal, suspicion, and a truth too dangerous to remain hidden. This is the last page of the diary, a Hercule Poirot mystery. If you enjoy stepping into the shadows with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because more mysteries await only here on Haunting Vales. Chapter 1. The Uneasy Arrival. The rain had begun its steady assault upon the quiet lanes of Market Bexley just as the evening lamps were being lit. The streets, usually cheerful with chatter and the clatter of horse-drawn carts, were subdued beneath a curtain of mist and drizzle. From the station, a figure emerged, short, impeccably dressed, and with the unmistakable air of one who regarded the world as a puzzle waiting to be solved. Hercule Poirot had arrived. He stepped onto the cobbled road, adjusting the brim of his bowler hat, and with a delicate tug at his immaculate mustache, he surveyed his surroundings. His green eyes missed nothing. The muddy footprints by the station door, the harried porter clutching a telegram, the faint smell of damp ink from the telegraph office nearby. Always, there are the little details, Poirot murmured softly, his Belgian accent precise and measured. Waiting to greet him was Inspector James Rowley of the local constabulary, a stout man with the ruddy complexion of one accustomed more to pub fires than delicate investigations. Rowley removed his hat nervously. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, "thank you for coming on such short notice. Scotland Yard said you were in London, and frankly, we didn't know who else to call." Poirot inclined his head politely. But of course, when one hears of Le Crime Mystérieux, how can Hercule Poirot resist? "Tell me, mon ami, what is it that has brought us together this dreary evening?" Rowley shifted uneasily. "It's about a diary. A young woman's diary, to be precise. Miss Clara Hensley. She was found dead 3 nights ago in her study. Everything pointed to suicide at first. A bottle of sleeping draught on the desk, her head resting upon her arm. But then," he paused, glancing around as though the fog might be listening. "Then we found the diary. And the last page." "Yes." Poirot prompted, his eyebrow arched. The last page had been torn out. The house of the late Clara Hensley stood on the edge of the village, a tall Georgian manor whose once proud windows now reflected only the gloom of the night. Inside, Poirot was ushered by Rowley into the study where the tragedy had occurred. The room was richly appointed, though in a slightly old-fashioned way. Shelves of worn books, a mahogany writing desk, heavy curtains shutting out the rain. Upon the desk lay the scattered remnants of a life: ink, bottle, blotting paper, a half-burned candle. And there, set neatly to one side, the diary, its leather binding cracked, its pages filled with the looping, hurried script of a young woman. Poirot's delicate fingers hovered above it. "So," he said softly, "it is here the key. A diary is the voice of the soul, is it not? One writes to confess what one dares not say aloud." He flipped carefully through the pages. Most of Clara's entries were mundane: social visits, village gossip, references to the endless drizzle of English weather. But Poirot, with his gift for noticing the smallest of things, paused at certain phrases. "I fear the shadow that grows closer. He watches from the garden. If only I could confide in someone before it is too late." Poirot closed the book gently. "Mon Dieu, it is not suicide. Mademoiselle Hensley feared for her life." Inspector Rowley shifted. "That was our thought, too, once we saw the entries. But the missing page, if only we knew what she had written in those final hours." Poirot's eyes glittered. "It is the last page of the diary that is missing. Therefore, it is the last page of her life story. Someone wished to silence her voice forever. As Poirot explored the study, he noticed small irregularities. A smudge of earth upon the windowsill, as though someone had entered from outside. A book on the shelf, Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, slightly displaced from the others. He lifted it, examining the dust line. It has been moved recently. Rowley frowned. Ackroyd? That's one of those detective novels she liked. Read them endlessly, she did. Death on the Nile, The Mystery of the Blue Train, Lord Edgware Dies. She had them all lined up there. Poirot smiled faintly. Eh bien, one must admire Madame Christie. She has the psychology of crime, yes? But note, Inspector, the book is out of place. Why? Rowley shook his head. With a swift motion, Poirot opened the book and found, pressed between the pages, a folded scrap of paper. Upon it, in Clara's hand, were scrawled hurried words. If anything should happen to me, look to the one who smiles too much. He knows what I know. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Voila! She leaves us the clue. But to whom does she refer? The one who smiles too much. That evening, Poirot took supper with Inspector Rowley at the local inn, the King's Arms. The fire crackled, and villagers murmured in corners, casting furtive glances at the detective with the peculiar mustaches. Rowley leaned closer. There are three main suspects, if we can call them that. First, her cousin, Henry Morton. He inherits the estate. Second, Miss Eliza Prower, a close friend who seems overly curious about the diary. And third, Dr. Leonard Fisk, the village physician. He was attending Clara for what he called nervous exhaustion. Poirot sipped his tisane thoughtfully. And which of them smiles too much? Rowley grunted. Fisk, if you ask me. Smiles like a cat in cream, even when the poor girl's body hadn't gone cold. Poirot tapped his temple. Perhaps. But we must not leap to conclusions, mon cher. To smile may hide guilt, or to conceal fear. A pause settled between them. Poirot leaned back, the firelight dancing across his face. Always, Inspector, it is the psychology that reveals the truth. We shall visit them each in turn, and we shall ask them, delicately, about the last page of the diary. He smiled softly. Because I tell you this, my friend, the last page still exists. It has not been destroyed. It is hidden, and Hercule Poirot shall find it. The next morning dawned gray and heavy with fog. Poirot set out first to Morton House, where Henry Morton resided. A tall, gaunt man with sharp features, Morton greeted them with forced courtesy. I was fond of Clara, of course, he said smoothly. A dreadful tragedy. Quite unthinkable. But she was highly strung, you know. Her imagination rather ran away with her. Diaries full of shadows and secrets. It was only a matter of time before she tipped over the edge. Poirot studied him intently. Morton's smile was thin, controlled. Not too much, not too little. But his eyes flicked nervously to the desk where unopened correspondence lay piled. Tell me, Monsieur Morton, Poirot asked gently. On the night of her death, where were you? Morton hesitated only a fraction of a second. I was at my club in London. Several members will vouch for me. Poirot inclined his head. Très bien. And her diary, you knew of it? Of course. She scribbled in it daily. Harmless nonsense, I assure you. Poirot murmured something polite, but inwardly he noted the man's eagerness to dismiss. The cousin protests too much, he thought. Their second visit was to Miss Eliza Prower, Clara's dearest friend. Eliza was a plump, cheerful woman with rosy cheeks and a laugh that tinkled like glass. Yet as Poirot questioned her, he noticed how often she smiled. Too often, perhaps, even when discussing Clara's death. Clara confided everything in me, she said brightly. She was lonely, poor dear, after her parents passed. Always writing, always worrying about someone in the shadows. I told her it was nonsense. Just nerves. Dr. Fisk said the same. Poirot leaned forward. And this diary, did she ever share its contents with you? Eliza fluttered. Oh, sometimes. Little bits. She was terribly dramatic, you know. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll remember, that sort of thing. Her smile widened, brittle and fixed. Poirot's mind sharpened. She smiles too much. Finally, they visited Dr. Leonard Fisk. He was a tall man with charming manners, his grin wide and polished. He welcomed them to his surgery with an ease that seemed rehearsed. "Poor Clara," he said with a shake of the head. "I warned her against overexertion. Nervous strain can lead to all manner of dark thoughts. The diary was simply an outlet, I believe. Nothing more." Rowley muttered under his breath. "Listen to him, smiling even now." Poirot observed the physician closely. Every word was accompanied by that gleaming smile, yet there was no warmth in his eyes. Instead, they darted restlessly, as though measuring every reaction. "Doctor," Poirot said at last, "forgive me, but I must ask, did Mademoiselle Hensley ever confide to you fears of being followed, of being watched?" Fisk hesitated. His smile faltered just slightly. Then it returned. "She may have mentioned something of the kind. But really, it was nothing but fancy, an overactive mind." Poirot's mustaches quivered. "Perhaps, doctor. Or perhaps it was the truth." That evening, back at the inn, Poirot sat alone by the fire, fingers steepled. He had seen them all. The cousin with his inheritance, the friend with her brittle laughter, the doctor with his too bright grin. Each could be the one Clara had feared. Each could have taken the last page of her diary. He murmured aloud, "It is there, somewhere, the answer. A smile that hides the truth. But whose?" And as the wind howled against the inn's windows, Poirot resolved. He would uncover the final words of Clara Hensley, torn from the world, but not from justice. Because to Hercule Poirot, every last page must be read. Chapter 2, Shadows Between the Lines. The fog still lingered the next morning, curling through the narrow streets of Market Bexley like ghostly fingers. Poirot, ever immaculate, descended the staircase of the inn with the precision of a man who believed order to be the guiding principle of the universe. He paused briefly to smooth his mustache in the mirror by the door, then stepped out into the gray morning. Inspector Rowley was waiting outside, his overcoat buttoned tightly, his hat pulled low. "Morning, Monsieur Poirot. You'll be glad to know I've had my men search the grounds of the Hensley estate again. Nothing. No sign of the missing page. No footprints beyond those we noticed at the study window." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Nothing? Ah, but it is always so when the search is conducted by those who do not ask what they are looking for. You seek a page. I seek a truth." Rowley gave a weary sigh. "And what truth is that?" Poirot gestured delicately with a gloved hand. "That the torn page was not destroyed. Non, a diary is not merely paper. It is confession, it is leverage. Whoever took it did so not to obliterate, but to possess." Rowley frowned. "Possess? For what purpose?" Poirot's green eyes glittered. "Ah, mon ami. Blackmail, perhaps. Or protection. It may be the page condemns not the one we think, but another. Until we read it, all is shadow." They made their way once more to the Hensley house. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of extinguished candles and damp books. Poirot went directly to the study, his small frame moving with surprising energy. He paused at the shelves once again, running his fingers along the rows of novels. Christie's works sat together like sentinels. The Mystery of the Blue Train, Death in the Clouds, the ABC Murders. Poirot plucked one at random, opened it, and inhaled the faint smell of old ink. Rowley shifted behind him impatiently. "Books, books, books. Do you think the missing page has been stuffed in one of those, too?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Not this time, perhaps. But note, my friend, Mademoiselle Hensley, was a reader of crime. She lived in fear. Is it not possible she sought in these tales a mirror of her own troubles? When the heart trembles, it turns to stories." Rowley scratched his head. You think she left us more clues among her novels? Poirot closed the book with a snap. We shall see. Their search of a room revealed another curiosity, a letter half hidden beneath the lining of the desk drawer. Poirot extracted it with tweezers, careful not to smudge the ink. The letter was addressed to Clara, and signed, its words chilling. You play a dangerous game. End it, or the truth will out. I will not be ruined by your pen. Burn it, or suffer. Rowley muttered a curse. That sounds like a threat, if ever I read one. Poirot's face grew grave. We, and notice, is about her pen, about her writing. Clearly, her diary contains something dangerous to another. The missing page, Rowley, is not merely a woman's last words. It is a weapon. He folded the letter carefully. The one who wrote this fears exposure. And those who fear exposure, they smile. Later that afternoon, Poirot and Rowley returned to question the three suspects once more. First, Henry Morton. He received them in his drawing room, nursing a brandy though it was hardly past noon. More questions? He asked with a forced smile. Very well. Ask away. Poirot's gaze fell upon a pile of letters on the side table. With quiet precision, he noted that one bore the same watermark as the threatening letter. Ah, Monsieur Morton, you correspond much, n'est-ce pas? Always the man of business. Morton stiffened. Naturally. Estate matters, you understand. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Tell me, did Clara ever speak to you of her fears? Morton hesitated, then gave a dismissive laugh. Clara was always fanciful. If she thought someone was out to get her, it was likely the gardener or the postman. She made mountains out of molehills. Poirot noted the flicker of irritation beneath his words. The cousins sought to belittle the dead woman's fears. Why? Their next call was upon Miss Eliza Prower. She welcomed them into her parlor with tea and cakes, her round face glowing. Yet Poirot saw again that too-ready smile, the brightness that never quite touched her eyes. Clara's diary, she said airily. Oh yes, she was forever scribbling in it. I told her once it would only cause trouble, keeping all those secrets in black and white. Secrets? Poirot asked softly. Eliza's smile widened. Oh, girlish fancies. Little crushes, suspicions. Nothing important. Poirot studied her closely. And yet you seem very certain that it was nothing important. Did she never confide to you names? Incidents. Eliza's teacup rattled faintly against the saucer. Names? Oh, no. Clara was far too discreet for that. She liked to be dramatic, but she wasn't cruel. Poirot murmured, We shall see. Finally, they returned to Dr. Leonard Fisk. He greeted them with that same dazzling grin, his white teeth gleaming. Gentlemen, again, I do hope this means progress is being made. Poor Clara deserves peace. Poirot inclined his head. Doctor, a letter has come to light. A letter threatening Mademoiselle Hensley if she did not destroy her words. Would you know aught of it? Fisk's grin faltered, then returned. A letter? How curious. No, I can't say I do. Perhaps another admirer gone sour? Clara had, let us say, a tendency to inspire passions. Poirot's gaze was steady, unblinking. Perhaps, or perhaps the passion belonged not to an admirer, but to one who feared her knowledge. The doctor's smile froze. Just for an instant. Poirot saw it. That evening, Poirot retired once more to his room at the inn. He sat at the small writing desk, his thoughts arranged as neatly as the lines of his notebook. One letter, one diary, one page missing. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. 3 suspects, each with something to gain, but only one hides behind the mask of too much smiling. He paused, staring at the flickering candle. And always there's the psychology. The cousin cold, dismissive. The friend smiling to hide fear. The doctor smiling to hide deceit. Which smile is false? Which conceals the shadow that Clara feared? Poirot leaned back, eyes closing briefly. It is there, the truth between the lines. But to find it, Hercule Poirot must look not only at what is written, his eyes opened, gleaming in the candlelight, but at what is torn away. And with that, he extinguished the candle. Shadows filled the room. Shadows and secrets waiting to be unveiled. Chapter 3. Whispers of the Torn Page. The following day broke brighter, though the September sun did little to warm the chill that had settled over Market Bexley. For Hercule Poirot, it was not the weather that brought unease, but the silence of a diary's last words stolen, the silence of smiles that hid too much. He descended from his room at the inn with his usual elegance. Even in the countryside, Poirot remained meticulous. His shoes gleamed, his mustache immaculate, his gloves spotless. To Inspector Rowley, waiting with a newspaper in hand, he looked almost out of place amid the damp cobblestones and muddy boots. Rowley snapped the paper shut. Another article about Miss Hensley. They've started calling it the Diary Mystery. London papers are sniffing about, saying it's just like something out of a Christie novel. Poirot gave a slight bow of the head. Madame Christie, she is most perceptive. It is not unlike the murder of Roger Ackroyd, where the truth hides in plain sight. N'est-ce pas? But we must remember, Inspector, life does not always imitate art so directly. The killer here does not write novels. He writes lies. Their first destination that morning was the village churchyard, for Clara Hensley had been buried only the day before. A handful of withered flowers lay on her grave, the inscription carved hastily into the stone. Poirot stood before in silence, his hands clasped behind his back. She wrote her fears, Inspector. She confessed them to the diary because she could not confess them to the world. And when she was silenced, the page that spoke the loudest was torn away. Rowley shifted uneasily. You think it's still out there? Somewhere in one of their hands. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. Oui, somewhere close. The whisper of the torn page follows us still. Later that day, they summoned the 3 suspects to the Hensley house under the guise of clarifying details. Poirot wished to watch them together, to see how one shadow might betray another. Henry Morton arrived first, his expression sour, his hands gloved though the day was mild. Eliza Prower bustled in next, all smiles and chatter, offering condolences that sounded rehearsed. Dr. Fisk was last, his grin dazzling, his movements smooth, as though the tragedy were a stage on which he played a role. Poirot gathered them in the drawing room, the curtains half drawn, the air heavy. "My friends," he began, "we are here not to accuse, but to understand. Clara Hensley has left us many words, but the final ones, the most important, are missing. Someone among us holds the last page of her diary." The silence was thick. Morton scoffed. Eliza gasped. Fisk smiled. Rowley barked. "Well, which of you has it, then?" Morton spread his hands. "Surely you don't suggest." Eliza shook her head violently, her smile faltering. "I love Clara. I would never." Fisk chuckled softly. "Come now, gentlemen. If I had such a page, don't you think I'd hand it over at once?" Poirot's eyes glittered. "Nah, doctor. For if you had it, to hand it over would be to sign your own condemnation." After the gathering, Poirot walked the study once more, his step deliberate, his gaze sweeping every detail. Something gnawed at his mind, a phrase Clara had written, "He watches from the garden." He went to the window, gazing out at the overgrown shrubs. "Inspector," he said suddenly, "have the grounds been searched thoroughly? Every hedge, every corner?" Rowley frowned. "Twice. Then we must search a 3rd time." But this time, with the eyes of Hercule Poirot. The search was meticulous. Poirot himself moved among the hedgerows, tapping gently with his cane, crouching to examine the earth. It was there, beneath a stone near the garden bench, that his keen eye caught the faintest corner of paper half buried in mud. With careful fingers, he drew it out. A page, torn, crumpled, stained by rain, but still legible. Rowley exclaimed, "The missing page! By heaven, you found it!" Poirot held it delicately. The ink was blurred, but the words emerged in Clara's hurried hand. "If I am gone, let be known, the one who smiles hides the darkest truth. He comes not as friend, nor as cousin, but as healer. Beware the smile of the doctor." Rowley's breath caught. "Fisk! It's Fisk!" Poirot's eyes were grave. "So it seems. But let us not rush, my friend. The smile of the doctor may hide guilt. Yet remember, smiles can also be forged, manipulated. We must not forget the psychology." That evening, Poirot confronted Dr. Fisk privately in his surgery. The air smelled of antiseptic, the walls lined with jars and instruments gleaming coldly. "Doctor," Poirot began softly, "the last page has been found." Fisk's grin flickered. "Oh, and what does it say?" Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "It speaks of you." Silence. The ticking of the clock grew louder. Fisk's smile froze, then returned, thinner, tighter. "My dear Poirot, surely you don't believe such a thing." Clara was unwell. Her fears distorted her mind. She could have written anything. Poirot leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "Perhaps. But then, doctor, why did you not mention that she came to you in fear? Why did you dismiss her words as fancy when you knew she trembled?" Fisk's jaw tightened. "Because it was nonsense. She needed rest, not indulgence." Poirot's mustaches quivered. "Doctor. She needed protection, and she trusted her diary more than she trusted you." Poirot returned to the inn that night, but he did not sleep. He sat awake, turning the page over and over, his mind racing. Something still did not fit. Yes, Clara accused the doctor. Yes, his smile was false. But Poirot's instinct, his little gray cells, whispered another possibility. Why had the page been hidden in the garden and not destroyed? Why risk discovery? And then he saw it, Clara's choice of words. "The one who smiles hides the darkest truth. He comes not as friend, nor as cousin, but as healer." Poirot sat bolt upright. What if the smile she wrote of was not the doctor's alone? What if another wore a smile, borrowed, manipulated, to cast suspicion where it would be most convenient? The shadows deepened around him. The whisper of the torn page had been heard. But whose voice truly spoke through Clara's words? Poirot knew then, this mystery was far from solved, and the danger was not past. Chapter 4. The Smile of Deception. The morning after the discovery of the torn diary page, Market Bexley hummed with rumor. Word of Poirot's find had spread in whispers through the village lanes, traveling faster than the baker's cart and louder than the church bells. The villagers spoke of nothing but Clara Hensley, her mysterious diary, and the foreign detective who had come to pull secrets from the fog. Poirot, however, sat in the inn's small dining room, his breakfast arranged with characteristic symmetry. 2 slices of toast cut at precise angles, a pot of tisane steaming gently, butter spread in a flawless square. He ate slowly, thoughtfully, as Inspector Rowley paced before him. "Poirot," Rowley said, "the page names Fisk outright. What more do we need?" The woman herself accused him. "Let's bring him in." Poirot dabbed at his mustache with a napkin. "Non, mon ami. To accuse is not the same as to prove. Clara Hensley wrote those words, yes, but what if they were written under duress? What if someone manipulated her fear, or worse, made certain she would point in the wrong direction?" Rowley stopped pacing. "You're suggesting she was made to write it?" Poirot lifted a finger. "I suggest only this. The torn page was not destroyed but hidden. Why? Because the one who tore it wished it might be found, at the right time, by the right people, and lead them astray. To plant suspicion, Inspector, is an art most cunning." Later that day, Poirot requested another meeting with the 3 suspects. He chose the Hensley drawing room once more, arranging the gathering with the precision of a stage manager preparing for a final act. Henry Morton arrived stiff and severe, his eyes betraying annoyance more than grief. Eliza Prower came bustling in, smiling too broadly, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her hat. And Dr. Leonard Fisk entered last, his grin polished but tight, as if it had been carved into his face. Poirot greeted them warmly, bowing slightly. Mesdames et messieurs, thank you for coming again. Today we speak not of what is lost, but of what has been found. Clara Hensley's last page has been recovered. Gasps. Morton's eyes widened, then narrowed. Eliza clutched her handbag, her smile flickering. Fisk's grin froze, then resumed, though his brow glistened faintly. Rowley stepped forward. It names you, Doctor. The page says you hide behind your smile. What do you have to say to that? Fisk's voice was calm, too calm. I say only that Clara was unwell. She misinterpreted kindness as menace. My smile was no mask. It was meant to reassure. Poirot's gaze was steady. Perhaps, Doctor, or perhaps it was meant to deceive. He let the silence hang, watching each of them. Morton shifted in his chair. Eliza's fingers gripped her handbag, as though it contained her very life. Poirot's mind sharpened. There's more. Always there's more. That evening, Poirot walked the Hensley Gardens alone, his cane tapping lightly upon the gravel. He paused at the bench where the torn page had been hidden, his thoughts circling like hawks. Why here? He murmured. Why the garden, when fire would have erased the words forever? Unless... He touched the bench, tracing the grain of the wood. Unless someone wanted the page found. Someone who wished to direct the gaze of Hercule Poirot away from themselves. The fog thickened. Poirot closed his eyes, recalling Clara's words. He comes not as friend, nor as cousin, but as healer. Yet had Clara written this freely, or had another hand guided hers? He remembered Christie's tale, The Mystery of the Blue Train, where appearances deceived, where jewels sparkled false to hide the truth. Perhaps Clara's final words sparkled falsely, too. Poirot's eyes opened sharply. Non. The true enemy smiles not with the mouth, but with the soul. And I have seen such a smile. The next day, Poirot paid another visit to Eliza Prower. Her cottage was warm and tidy, smelling of lavender and fresh scones. She received him eagerly, chattering, her face lit with that bright, ever-ready smile. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, I heard you found the page. How dreadful for poor Clara to have written such things. Poirot sat, folding his hands. Yes, it is dreadful. But you knew, did you not, that Clara feared someone? You said she confided her worries to you. Eliza's smile wavered. Oh, little things, you know. Nothing important. Poirot leaned forward gently. Mademoiselle, do not think Hercule Poirot is so easily deceived. Your smile, it is charming, yes, but behind it there is fear. Tell me, what is it you hide? Eliza's teacup clattered against the saucer. For the briefest instant, her eyes filled with panic. Then she laughed too loudly. Hide? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, you are mistaken. But Poirot was not mistaken. He saw it, the smile that shielded something darker. Meanwhile, Inspector Rowley continued pressing for an arrest. Fisk fits Poirot. The page names him. Clara's words condemn him. Poirot shook his head. Words can be twisted, my friend. Remember the murder at the Vicarage. There, too, the obvious answer concealed the truth. We must look at the psychology, always. Why does the cousin dismiss Clara's fears? Why does the friend smile too much? Why does the doctor grin, even in grief? Each wears a mask. The question is, whose mask hides murder? Poirot set a trap. He invited all three to the Hensley house once more, this time in Clara's very study. The diary lay open upon the desk, the torn page placed beside it. Poirot stood before them, small yet commanding, his eyes sharp as blades. My friends, he began, the truth is like the diary. It cannot be silenced. Clara Hensley named her enemy. Yes, but she also gave us more. Look closely. Her words were not finished. They were hurried, shaped by fear. And fear can be planted. He turned to Morton. You, monsieur, had motive, inheritance. You dismissed her fears too eagerly. To Eliza, you, mademoiselle, had knowledge. She confided in you. And your smile hides too much. To Fisk, and you, doctor, had access. Her medicines, her trust. You smiled while she weakened. Poirot raised his voice. But only one of you tore the page. Only one of you placed it in the garden to be found. And that person is... He stopped. Silence fell. 3 faces turned toward him, 3 masks trembling. Poirot's eyes blazed. Non, not yet. Hercule Poirot does not speak before the time. Tomorrow, yes, Amos, I shall reveal all. Tomorrow, we lift the final mask. And with that, he closed the diary. That night, Poirot stood once more at the inn window, gazing into the darkness. His reflection looked back at him, neat, composed, inscrutable. The smile of deception, he whispered. Whose is it truly? Tomorrow, Hercule Poirot shall know, and the last page of the diary shall speak. The wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere in the village, a door creaked closed. The killer knew their time was almost at an end. Chapter 5, the last page revealed. The drawing room of the Hensley house was hushed, the very air heavy with dread. The 3 suspects sat before Poirot and Inspector Rowley. Henry Morton, stiff and pale, Dr. Leonard Fisk, outwardly calm yet perspiring, and Eliza Prower, her smile faltering more with each passing minute. The diary lay open on the table, the torn page displayed like a relic at trial. The fire burned low, casting long, sinister shadows on the walls. Poirot stood before them, small but unshakable, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. Mess Amos, he began softly, it is time. Clara Hensley is no longer here to speak, but her diary speaks for her. And Hercule Poirot, he has listened. Rowley crossed his arms. Get on with it, Poirot. Who killed her? Poirot raised a hand. Patience, mon ami. Precision is everything. If one rushes, one stumbles. He paced slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Clara wrote, he comes not as friend, nor as cousin, but as healer. He hides behind his smile. On this, Inspector Rowley insists. She meant Dr. Fisk. Logical, oui. Simple, oui. But too simple. And Hercule Poirot distrusts simplicity when human hearts are involved. He turned to Henry Morton. You had reason, monsieur. With Clara gone, the inheritance becomes yours. And you dismissed her fears too quickly. Yet you're clumsy with deceit. Too blunt. Too direct. No, you're not the spider at the center of this web. Poirot turned next to Dr. Fisk. And you, doctor, a man of science, of smiles. You had access to Clara's health. You had the mask of kindness. And yet, your smile was not the right one. Hers said healer, but also not his cousin. You were too obvious, too expected. Clara was cleverer than that. At last, Poirot turned to Eliza Prower. She sat frozen, her lips curled in that fragile, nervous smile. Mademoiselle Prower, Poirot said gently, you were Clara's closest companion, her confessor, her friend. But it is from those closest that betrayal cuts deepest. Clara confided her fears to you, did she not? And what did you do? You smiled. Always you smiled. Too brightly. Too insistently. You comforted her while feeding her despair. And when she began to write the truth, you tore out the page. Eliza's hands trembled. The smile wavered, flickered, then vanished entirely. You hid the page in the garden, Poirot continued. Not to destroy it, but to ensure it would be found at a moment that condemned another. The doctor? Oui. You wished us to look at him, never at you. But you erred, mademoiselle. For Clara wrote, not as cousin. A curious phrase, unless she feared one who was both, and not. You are family, are you not? The second cousin through her mother's line, though you pretended to be only a friend. Eliza gasped. That's a lie. Poirot's voice cut like a blade. It is the truth. The records confirm it. You are kin, mademoiselle. Clara knew this. She feared it. And so, in her last words, she sought to reveal you, if only obliquely. But she did not finish. Her hand was stayed by poison in her tea. Poison, you brood. Eliza's eyes darted wild. Her hands clutched at her bag as though it could swallow her whole. Poirot stepped forward. The smile of deception, mademoiselle, is yours. It is you who killed Clara Hensley. The room exploded into silence. Then a broken laugh. Eliza sank back in her chair, the mask crumbling. She was going to ruin me, she whispered. She was going to tell everyone. The money, the inheritance. I had nothing without it. Nothing. Her voice cracked. So I smiled. And I did what I had to. Rowley snapped his cuffs upon her wrists, grim. Eliza Prower, you are under arrest for the murder of Clara Hensley. Poirot bowed his head. Justice at last. Later, Poirot sat by the dying fire, his mustache gleaming faintly in the glow. Rowley joined him, weary but satisfied. You had me fooled, Poirot. I was ready to hang it on the doctor. Poirot smiled faintly. That is why Hercule Poirot lives, so that justice does not stumble. Clara trusted her diary to outlive her. And so it has. He closed the book, gently, reverently. The last page was not written in ink, Inspector. It was written in courage. And that, no murderer can erase. The fire hissed, and silence fell. And so, dear viewers, the case of the last page of the diary comes to its chilling close. Poirot has unmasked the smiling deceiver, and justice has been served. But tell me, what did you think of Poirot's method? Did you suspect Eliza from the beginning? Or did the diary's final page deceive you as well? If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery with us, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more Hercule Poirot cases, and share it with fellow mystery lovers. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous smile is the one that hides the darkest truth. Until next time, the little gray cells bid you good night.